see you all. Welcome to King's Place. Welcome to Pod Save the UK. It's very lovely to see you all. We have an incredible show for you. It says here I'm supposed to ramp up the crowd. They seem, all right, they seem pretty ramped. They're pretty fucking ramped. These people, some people taking photos and videos. It's going to be released on the internet. This is not an exclusive live event. We're very excited. This can be a fun show, right?
Yeah, it really, really is. We've got some incredible guests. We're going to be talking about the future of the left. Do you remember that meme? This is the future the left want. And it was always some sort of snarky attack.
It was often a picture of me. It was often used as a personal attack. Yeah. I do remember.
But this is what we're doing. We are talking about the actual future the left want. That isn't just like whatever the right-wing memes were talking about, I don't know, only having dark chocolate or something. I think
it was something about Sharia law. It's always Sharia law. It's always Sharia law, to be fair to them. Let's just get this out of the way before we get into the chat that we're going to have with our guests about the future of the left. Angela Rayner is out. This was huge news this week, and was a blow for, I think, the soft left of the Labour Party, who would look to Rayner as one of the few sort of soft left voices in the government. And after she quit, there's been a massive reshuffle and realignment. So the reshuffle seems to be targeting areas where the government has failed in its first year and are going to look at it as a chance to reset some poisoned departments. So its plans for welfare reform, which were obviously a total disaster, that's resulted in Liz Kendall getting a demotion, and Pat McFadden coming in, who has been described as a government fixer, which I still am not clear about as a term, and makes it sound like Harvey Keitel's character in Pulp Fiction. I'm not entirely clear on what the fixer element of this is.
Yeah, so we are someone who has campaigned against the government's attempts at welfare reforms, and we won't say who because we protect our sources here at PS UK, and they said on the plus side, Liz is gone, but also Pat is even more hardline with less visible skills or understanding. They also told us that it's important to remember it was Rayner negotiating for concessions around the welfare reform, so it doesn't fill us all with so much confidence.
Let's move on to the next clusterfuck. The Home Office, the British Institute of Organised Racism. So the tinted prescription of Palestine action has been very politically damaging, and we think, again, in words that we have to run past a lawyer every time we say them, it is bad. I think that's been legal. And sets a chilling precedent that undermines our democracy. We're talking on Sunday afternoon. This is the day after 857 people were arrested while protesting against the prescription on Saturday. So I think another sort of 17 more have been arrested for disorderly conduct or violence against the police. But 857 of the arrests made yesterday were simply for expressing support for Palestine action, which is obviously completely insane. I don't know how much longer this law can survive, right? I don't know how many more pictures we can have in the newspapers of like an 80-year-old woman doing this, just like being led away by their limbs by 4 policemen and like dangled like a goddamn Stretch Armstrong action figure. Like, it's I really don't know how many more retired priests we can see be dragged away by the police force in this country before something has to move on that law. Obviously, that's not the only issue here with the Home Office. There's also the government's complete inability to dismantle the inflammatory and racist conversation around immigration. So Yvette Cooper has been demoted upwards to Foreign Secretary. It's one of the whitest things I've ever heard in my life. Like, only white people can be fired into better jobs. She's been shuffled to become Foreign Secretary and has made way for Shabana Mahmood, who's previously the Justice Secretary, who we should note, and this is a quote, agrees with J.K. Rowling's views on gender and says that biological sex is real and is immutable. Another proud day for the South Asian community. Just when you thought we were done with these fucking people.
And it doesn't end yet. So on one of the many areas where we and the government disagree, many areas, it's our place on the world stage. So it's no surprise to our regular listeners that we've been very disappointed and ashamed by our government's handling of the genocide in Gaza. But Starmer is undoubtedly thrilled by the performance of former Foreign Secretary, because he's now the Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy. It is strange with David Lammy because I have seen him at Palestine rallies. He was at the Stop Trump rally with you, I believe.
Yeah.
So it was always strange to see him sort of do the double speak. I don't know, if you're being generous, you might say maybe that's why he's moved away from this, although there's a better reason that's being cited.
Which is?
That he's best mates with JD Vance.
Yeah, but isn't that a reason to keep him in the post? This is what I don't understand about the Lammy move. Like, if you look at it coldly and rationally, Lammy has been sort of credited with easing the tariffs placed on the UK because of his relationship with whatever the nature of his super special friendship is with his fishing buddy JD Vance. Maybe the idea of this is that by moving him into Deputy Prime Minister, it's an idea that Vance has a closer ear to Keir Starmer.
Well, he's the mirror, right? He's the mirror if he's Deputy PM and JD Vance is... I don't know, I feel like they're trying to tighten up this bromance. They're fishing buddies.
I've always felt that the Deputy Prime Minister is not analogous with the Vice President. Like, it feels like the Vice President in the States has more constitutional responsibility, whereas our Deputy Prime Minister feels a little bit like when I was in a cricket team and I won an award for Clubman of the Year, which was like the player who tried the most despite being visibly and obviously shit. Like, that's how... I might be wrong, and I'm happy to be corrected if there are constitutional and legal responsibilities that our Deputy Prime Minister has, but to me it's always felt like a bit of a kind of,
Yeah.
It's something you give a kid to stop them from acting out at a dinner.
Well, look, there's no two ways about it. This first year has been... it's been shambolic, and we should note that this reshuffle represents a rightward shift. It's all we've been talking about since this government came in. Is, they're going to the right, and they said, don't worry, PSUK, we still have moves. And while Farage might be gutted that his big moment in the spotlight at the Reform Party was snatched away this week, it does mark the high point of his outside influence on the government.
And listen, whatever you think about Angela Rayner, and I think given the specific nature of her responsibility in government, and it probably was correct for her to resign, especially if the government is going to make moves on property taxation in the budget in November. But whatever you think about Rayner, it is really, really important to note that this weekend, The Guardian has run a story looking into Nigel Farage's financial affairs. So he has avoided paying tax on his GB News show by getting GB News to pay into a corporation, which attracts just 25% rate of tax. Now, that's something that's been happening across the media, and increasingly broadcasters are attempting to crack down on it when individual presenters set up companies for the specific purpose of taking in their wages from that broadcaster so that they pay a lower rate of tax on it. So he's doing that already. So that's a 25% rate of tax that he's paying on wages that you would expect to pay 40% on if you were earning them as pure income as a self-employed person. Also, the house that he lives in Clacton was purchased by his partner, which again is an opportunity to avoid tax to the tune of £44,000, okay? That is even more than Rayner's tax dodge. So whatever you think about Angela Rayner, it is worthwhile taking a second to note the enormous cultural and political problem that lies at the heart of this country and has lain at the heart of this country really for the last 25 years, which is there is an enormous double standard in what we expect from progressive politicians versus what we expect from Nigel Farage, right? It is... I didn't mean to set him up as he is the opposite of progressive. Like, I'm sorry that I hate the fact that I have to stand here and be like, Nigel Farage, the politician, and not Nigel Farage, the obvious racist. But it is a huge double standard. The way that Nigel Farage is treated is extraordinary. I think hypocrisy is bad, but I think there is a cultural and political problem where we have placed an emphasis on hypocrisy being worse than just being a cunt. Like, we really, really have. If somebody is hypocritical or is living in a way that's contrary to the way that they express themselves in public, that is bad. But it's also bad to just be a cunt all the time. Like, consistency is not in of itself a virtue that we should be celebrating. Can I tell you who else has been consistent in their lives? Adolf Hitler, Jack the Ripper, and Jimmy Carr. Those people have all been consistent their entire lives, and it is not necessarily a good thing.
So we had Alexei Sale on the podcast last week, and he talked about this great moment in The Simpsons that I'm now going to paraphrase from him and therefore Homer Simpson, which is the originator of this great quote. So someone says to Homer Simpson, there's a crisis, an opportunity, it's the same word in a language, I've forgotten which, don't worry about it. And Homer responds saying, woohoo, crisitunity.
Yeah.
And so here we are, a crisitunity for the left. Terrible times, but a chance to regroup. So that's what we're doing. We're regrouping, which is a perfect time to bring on our next guest. She's the Member of Parliament for Coventry South. She's the co-founder of a new party that promises to be the voice for a progressive Britain. I don't need to give you an introduction, but let's say hello to Zarah Sultana.
Sarah just said, hello, Nish. I see you've been saying some problematic things. You've got a fucking nerve, Missy.
I had a note before you came on that you were going to come into Oasis, but it was just our theme music.
What did you play?
You requested,
I'm so sorry.
Zara requested Oasis.
I can explain.
Yeah, but I have to explain to you why we couldn't play it.
Yeah,
We
please
literally
do.
can't afford to clear the rights.
You can't just go on YouTube or Spotify and just press play.
No.
Like the bureaucracy, the red tape, insane.
This is what we left Brussels for. This is exactly what Brexit was about, being able to play Oasis, as far as I understand.
I'm actually really frustrated because you were going to come out to roll with it.
Yes.
And I had this whole bit in my head being like, oh, I wonder if that's a metaphor for your party because, you know, they're just rolling with it. They're seeing how it's going. They're going to reach out to their members. But maybe a better Oasis song for her to come out would be Don't Look Back in Anger because that's how she feels about the Labour Party. And I had this whole
feels
bit.
like an English literature exam where it's like, what do you think the author meant by like a black sky? And it's like, yeah, absolutely, all of the above.
It hurts that we both did English at uni. That was such a read.
Sorry.
Sarah. That was such a read.
No, it's just a correct read of the situation. Why did you want to come out to Oasis? Explain it to us.
Because I was able to finally get my hands on tickets. Not in London, but I had to go to New York.
Wait, you paid for them?
Yes, yes. Some MPs do pay for their own tickets. It's shocking, I know. Yeah, so basically me and my partner spent about 5 hours on multiple devices, different email addresses, trying to get these fucking tickets to see Oasis in Wembley, and did not succeed. And then I went on Twitter, as most of us do, to vent, and I did hashtag nationalised Ticketmaster, and people lost their shit. But my partner's brother managed to get tickets for New York, and I've never been. And we just went last week, and it was really funny. Well, getting secondary questioning was not funny because racial profiling sucks, but...
What?
Yeah.
You got
So what happened?
detained?
You got questioned at JFK?
Yeah, so we basically went to the desk and there was a woman who was just asking us, like, why are you here? And we're like, tourists. And she was really friendly, which is actually really quite disturbing because then she sent me for secondary questioning, and my partner's white didn't get secondary questioning, and it was just like, you guys you're so obvious. And I went and I waited for about 45 minutes to an hour, and I kind of prepared for this. I even bought a watch, right? I like off Amazon. I don't actually wear watches. I just use my phone like most people. But my friend had told me that when you're detained, they don't have clocks just to fuck with you, right? So you don't have a sense of time. And if you're then taken into these like interrogation rooms and then detained, you could be there for 12 hours, but you have no sense of time because there are no clocks. So I bought a watch for that purpose. And then, so I'm sitting there for about 45 minutes. I get out a bag of pretzels, cinnamon flavored pretzels, because I'm like, I don't know how long I'm going to be here. And eventually an officer calls me up and asks the same questions, why are you here? And I said, oh, I'm here to see Oasis. Had no idea who they were. And I replied, Liam and Noel Gallagher, like, surely that should... No, nothing. And then eventually he asks what my job is, and this is when racial profiling meets the privilege of my job, and then they kind of equal in equilibrium. I said, I'm a member of parliament, which is the equivalent to a congresswoman in your political system. And he said, oh, okay. And then it was very quick after that.
Really? No.
Thank God he didn't ask you anything about your political beliefs.
Yeah, didn't search that, didn't look at that, no.
Which Conservative Party? The equivalent of the Republicans. I'm our Marjorie Taylor Greene. Don't Google it.
You say that, but as I was answering the questions, I was looking up and there was a framed photo of Donald Trump, and I was like, this is so fucked, honestly.
Oh my goodness me.
Yeah, hopefully they don't pick up on the fact that I'm going to be speaking at a Stop Trump demo in a couple of days. All of those, prickly political things.
There's various advice going out to people who have in any way expressed themselves publicly about Donald Trump in a negative sense, and did you take a burner phone or anything?
Yes, burner phone, watch, kind of all printed out like boomers, everything, like hotel tickets, Broadway tickets, everything. And then actually, I did take my parliamentary pass just in case, because I was like, member of parliament, here's the proof, here's the proof. Because it was all physical proof, right? Because the second you say, oh, let me show you on my phone, again, this is another tip.
Don't take your phone
Don't
out.
take your phone, but if you then take out your phone, that gives them the permission or the ability to take your phone and then basically take everything off it. And anyone who tries to claim the US is a democracy, it really isn't. The way you have to think about even traveling there, the way you are there, what you see there, and the ICE stories and everything else is frightening. And bringing it back to home, that's where we could be in not a lot of time, right? In a couple of years, if we elect Nigel Farage in 2029 and he is already, talking about deportations, he's already voting against workers' rights, we could be in a very similar place.
Let's bring it home. Let's start with how you're feeling since extricating yourself, to use a non-pejorative phrase.
When people ask me this question, I think sometimes they expect me to be like, oh, I'm so sad, or I've been so worried. I'm so good. I feel liberated. I feel fucking free. And I could not be part of a genocide apartheid party. And I tried my level best while I was in the Labour Party every single week to hold them to account for arms sales to Israel, trying to call for universal free school meals, supporting wealth taxes, supporting all of those progressive policies around social housing, not being in, bed with developers and lobbyists and oil and gas giants. And it got to a point where it was like, this isn't a matter of if I leave, it's a matter of when. And every week became more and more difficult. Terrible things were being ushered in. And in particular, the week that I resigned was the week that a Labour Party that is led by a human rights lawyer prescribed a non-violent direct action group for the first time in British history. Palestine Action were prescribed.
A civil rights lawyer who 20 years ago defended protesters from the exact same action.
The hypocrisy, which you were speaking to earlier, but it also cut benefits for disabled people, the most marginalized in our community. And we're long past the days where we have to tell people why austerity was bad. We all know it was bad. We all know the amount of excess deaths that came from that. We know how it has harmed our communities and how the most marginalized in our society, especially disabled people, bore the brunt of that. So to see a Labour government do that in power when it doesn't have to, because it can make different economic choices, meant that being in that party was just unconscionable, and I had to leave.
Do you feel, you sound free, and you feel, you saying you feel very energised and positive. Do you also understand that for a lot of Labour voters, they will be feeling very sad that the values that you're espousing put you at odds with the Labour Party? Because everything that you've said is, I imagine, a lot of the reason why people vote Labour in this country, right?
Yeah, it's the reason why I joined the Labour Party as a 17-year-old. I was really pissed off about the tripling of tuition fees. I saw the Labour Party not as the perfect political party, but the party that most closely represented my values and my principles around equality, investing in our public services. And then to see the Labour Party that we have now, it is not the same Labour Party. That Labour Party is dead.
Well, it's I've lots of people that I really respect and have, shepherded me through my journalism career. They've always told me, it's the Labour movement that you love, not necessarily the party. And the question is the Labour movement still working with the Labour Party? Has that fallen away? If you want to be part of a Labour movement, what does that look like? I think we'll probably discuss on this panel about that disconnect, if it still exists. It's probably a good opportunity for me to just ask you, though, what's your take on this Angela Rayner debacle?
I do not feel sympathy for Angela Rayner. And I know that has been much of the framing over the past few days. But Angela Rayner voted to scrap winter fuel payments. She voted to cut disability benefits. She has voted to keep the 2-child benefit cap. She has defended this government when it sells arms to Israel and has defended its enabling of genocide. And so my sympathy is with the millions of kids that are still in poverty, the people that were struggling, the elderly people that struggled through winter, and disabled people who, again, are having to make difficult decisions around heating and eating. That's where my sympathy is. And again, her story it epitomizes the anger that a lot of people feel when I knock on doors in Coventry and everywhere else, when they say, oh, it's one rule for you and another rule for everyone else. That's what dodging 40k in tax speaks to, that disconnect between Westminster and ordinary people. And I think we need to understand that a lot of people live very difficult lives where they're making difficult choices between paying the bills at the end of the month, and then they see politicians who just think they can get away with it, and we have to rebuild that trust.
But why does Nigel Farage sit outside of that paradigm, the idea that there's one rule for them and one rule for us? Why is it, do you think, that Nigel Farage, who has also avoided £44,000 in stamp duty, why does he sit outside of this idea that the political class is completely disconnected?
Well, he shouldn't. He shouldn't. He frames himself as this anti-establishment guy when he couldn't be more establishment. His wealthy stockbroker background, the privilege that he comes from, and the friends that he has. He's got billionaire donors to his party, which is a private limited party, a company rather, posing as a political party. This is someone who was rehabilitated by our media class. He got 1.5 million to go and arm a celeb. He has the second highest number of appearances on BBC Question Time. Yeah. So he's very mainstream, and he is platformed more than ordinary politicians. And that's what it speaks to. It speaks to the fact that the establishment like him, the media are not going to give him a hard time because he's one of them. And so it is up to us on the left, or the duty is on us, to show people what a fool he is, how he has voted against their interests, how he opposes their interests, and how he's going to harm them. And I was going to say destroy their lives, but I guess if you're a migrant or if you're from a marginalized background, him in power is going to destroy your life, and is a scary, scary thing to come to terms with.
Well, let's talk about your party. I think it's safe to say that when you announced it broke the internet.
Not quite like Kim Kardashian, but
listen,
close.
Both great moments in my world. Okay.
You should have got Corbs to get his arse out.
That's not what I was going with, but we're here now.
I've got a note in my script that says, the party had XXX supporters, because we're not actually sure of the numbers. I've heard, what is the number?
Over 750,000. And the coolest bit is we got over 200,000 sign-ups within the first 20 hours, which just speaks to the desperation, the energy, and how excited people are, because that rate is immense. It makes me low-key speechless.
It's a massive undertaking setting up a party there, right?
Yeah, it's never been done before. You say that, and then everyone's like, this has never happened before. And I'm like, oh shit, it really hasn't.
So where are you on the progress bar? How downloaded is this new party?
So it's been a month since I announced with Jeremy that we were going to co-lead the founding of a new party. And people are getting very... I was going to say they're getting desperate to know what's going to happen. When is the conference going to be announced?
Yeah, for sure.
There's an impatience, and I get it, there's a frustration as well. But this can't be a top-down, here's this polished PR version of a party. And when you say it was a bit messy, it's because it really is coming from a very authentic way of developing a party that is rooted in working class communities, that members have to have an ownership of. And at this moment in time, just getting a conference arrangements committee that is gender balanced, that reflects our regional diversity as well as our racial diversity, that has representation from trade unions and social movements, is so important. Otherwise, it could be another top-down machine led by MPs, very Westminster-centric, just focused on elections, which I don't think it should be. I think if you just focus on elections, which happen every 4 years, you become irrelevant when there aren't elections. And so you need to have strength within social movements, within trade unions, and that's what's taken a bit of time. trying to find technology venues and a way to engage over 750,000 people is no easy job. And so we need to make sure we get it right. And that is what is taking time. And I fully get it, but we can't rush this process, because having democracy, which is so important, which distinguishes us from everyone else, is what is essential to get right.
Well, your co-leader with Jeremy Corbyn, Corbynism, I actually really hate the term Corbynism. Like, I remember even at the time, I found it really irritating. I remember just thinking, like, someone described me as a Corbynista, and I was like, babe, I had these politics before I really even knew who that man was, to be completely honest. Like, I've always found that very irritating. But nonetheless, for our generation, us geriatric millennials, Corbynism... Yeah. Do you know that was 10 years ago? What happened? Time really flies when you're having
the back
fun.
pain and the grey hairs. They're there.
Okay, well, you didn't have to look directly at me when you said back pain and grey hairs. So I know I'm older than both of you, but...
I was talking about myself, actually.
But 10 years on, we are in a very different political moment. I would argue we're in an even more scary moment where you have actual fascists barking at the door. So how should the left be adapting to this very present moment?
I think we need to learn from Corbynism, as you put it, recognising its strength, its mass appeal, the hope, the joy, the excitement, the fun, the cultural parts, which I loved, its bold policy platform, but also at the same time recognise that we are in a more dangerous place. We have fascism growling at the door. We have people trying to set fire to migrant hotels. We've got climate destruction at a much faster rate, and we have to grapple with those issues. And so you have to be bolder in what you're saying. You need to understand that when you take on the establishment, they're going to come at you like they did to Jeremy and the Labour Party at the time with everything. And that's why my approach has very much been, you can't give the media and the establishment an inch. The media, legacy media, not you guys, legacy media are class enemies. If you look at who owns them, if you look at the front pages they've been putting out, if you look at the interests that they advocate for, we can't treat them as they're just neutral observers of what's going on. No, they frame the discourse. They are able to influence public opinion, and so you operate with them, or you talk to them on a basis that you're comfortable with, and that's been my approach when it comes to dealing with legacy media. I think it's really important that we support independent, new forms of media, local media, and so forth. And therefore, going back to Corbynism, understanding what went wrong is really important. But I think we've got a really exciting opportunity. You called it a crisitunity. Well, it is. It's a crisis for our country, for the world, but it's an opportunity for the left to reclaim our political space, because the Labour Party, basically, its strategy, which it was briefing to journalists, was, well, the left have nowhere to go. That's what Peter Mandelson always believed. The left have nowhere to go, so they're going to vote for the Labour Party, and they didn't believe that the Greens were doing a good job. And this way, we're saying, actually, we do have somewhere to go. We're going to build it ourselves, and we're going to win for our communities, and we're not going to play hostage to the way that you think this two-party system governs our country, which we know is also dead. And so taking this with both hands, fighting for a future for not just young people, for everyone, because we deserve to live in a safe, equal country where whether you're born here or you've moved here, whether you're old or you're young, whether you're cis or you're trans, whether you're black, Asian or white, it shouldn't matter. You should all be able to live with safety, in dignity. And at the moment, that's just simply not happening for anyone.
PodSave the UK is brought to you by Shopify.
When you start a business, you have to figure it all out for yourself. You have to set things up, and it can be incredibly overwhelming. Every day will bring new decisions that need an answer. And when you're starting with something new, it can feel like your to-do list keeps growing, and that can easily begin to overrun your life. So finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify.
Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started.
Getting started with your own design studio. With hundreds of ready-to-use templates, Shopify helps you build a beautiful online store to match your brand style.
Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write product descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography.
Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling.
And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond.
If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify.
Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side.
Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.co.uk/podsavetheuk.
Shopify.co.uk/podsavetheuk.
Go to shopify.co.uk/podsavetheuk.
You talked about that Corbynism, again, that word, but you talked about that time and the kind of culture moment of it. Like a lot of music artists got involved. It was reaching across all different disciplines to galvanise particularly younger people at that time. So I think this is probably a really good opportunity to get our next guest on, who is also a brilliant culture maker, already been very vocal about their support for your party. So
Yeah, they're the drag queen that needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's in the script. Ever since appearing on RuPaul's Drag Race UK, they've taken the world by storm, rising to fame with their razor-sharp wit and incredible outfits, but just as fierce as their looks, a phrase which, coming out of my mouth, does not sound correct. I've never felt more like an undercover cop in my fucking life. But just as fierce as their looks is their activism and devotion to the LGBTQ+ community, and they haven't stopped dominating since. Books, music, fashion shows, podcasts and performances across the globe. There seems to be very little that they can't do.
So can I ask you to give a fabulous welcome to the one and only Bimini Bon-Boulash.
Hello. Let me make sure you can't see up
I
my
feel
skirt.
so underdressed next to Bim.
I'm just really excited. We've got a drag queen, an MP, a journalist and a comedian.
It looks like we typed into ChatGPT, can you give a Daily Mail reader a brain aneurysm as fast as humanly possible? It's like we're trying to wipe out half the Telegraph's readership in one photograph.
Can we?
Fucking hell. This is going to be the shortest podcast we've ever done. How are you, Bimini? Thank you so much for being here.
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I've been very excited about this. I was in Lyon last night DJing 12 hours ago, and then 12 hours later, I'm sat here. So
I'm not going to lie to you. When the producers told me that, and this is how you know that I'm a loser and that I just stay at home with my baby, I thought they meant Leon, where you get the rat.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow, what an interesting partnership.
Could you imagine, that's my life? Bimi's just at Lyon, around the corner, and then they're coming to the podcast.
Yeah.
No, I was doing that, and I just feel like, that's why I love my life so much. 12 hours ago, I'm DJing to 1,800 people gurning, and then next thing you know, I'm sat here talking about politics.
And that is the future the left wants.
Yeah.
It's what we deserve.
I mean, all you have to do is go to the toilets in Parliament, isn't it? Don't they say that there's
Not
loads of
all of
cocaine
us,
on the
Bim.
I reckon we've got 3 minutes of podcast so far. I reckon this is good. Going well.
Is having a laugh illegal?
Might be under Farage.
Yeah. Also, Bimini, you're on Celebrity SAS.
I was, yeah.
You were, yes.
It's just finished now. Thank you.
We've got one Celebrity SAS fan in the room.
I mean, firstly, I will say, so that was recorded 15 months ago. I have always been very vocal about how establishments of war are very, very critical of that. I'm not in agreement of the fact that we need to have a military service, because essentially it's men in power sending people out to essentially kill other people. I just think that's wrong. I don't believe that we should have that. And when I got asked to do it, it was kind of like a thing being I don't really necessarily understand the ins and outs and the psychology of it. And actually going into it, I learned a lot from the people that go to it, and their idea of why they want to do it so much when they go to it is because a lot of it is sense of loss of who they are. Yeah. They want to find something deeper than themselves. And I feel like it's a shame that we have that belief, that a lot of people believe that they have to kind of serve for their country in a way because of the powers to be sending people to do it. I think it's a shame. And also I will say I did it 15 months ago before I knew what the UK were doing over in Palestine, and I think it's sad to see that. So I don't necessarily support institutions of war at all, but I had a really good time doing it.
Yeah, they've invited you on Celebrity
Have they ever
SAS
invited me onto Celebrity SAS? Are you fucking high, woman? No, they've not invited me onto Celebrity Essay. That'd be the
please.
worst booking. I didn't even do Cub Scouts. Because, and this is true, when I was 8 years old, I asked my mum if I could join, and she said, Asians don't camp. That is true.
I mean, I never camped until I went to Glastonbury.
Yes! That's the first time any of us
There's a
camped.
thing there.
But no, I've never done. It wouldn't be a good booking. I'm allergic to most things outdoors. But how much of you doing stuff like that? How conscious are you that your presence in a show like that is in of itself subversive?
Well, so many comments afterwards because I got to the end. Woo! I'll just whoop myself. I got to the end, and I think because a lot of people were like, "Oh, I thought you were going to be shit." Because you're a drag queen and you're queer. And like they have like, so, and this is no shade to them because I love Louis Spence. Louis Spence went out on the first episode and obviously was like there for entertainment right at the beginning. It was hilarious. We love Louis. Everyone thought I was going to be the same. I did rock up in a pink tracksuit, but I am stubborn. Like I am not going to get kicked out unless they tell me that they're going to kick me out. And then they realized, they were like, no, you're quite hard. Like you're doing it. And I think representation, especially in the UK right now, especially in the media, it's a lot of misrepresentation, or it's a lot of like taking one singular person and basing an entire community on that. So the idea of non-binary and people that reject the idea of binary, it became ridiculed by people on This Morning or Good Morning Britain, and it became like a mockery of people's existence. So I think for me, going on there and taking up space is important.
Do you feel dragged into it? Do you feel you've had to offer your own self into a political conversation, or is it something you've done willingly?
I love the adjective there, dragged into it. No, I think I dragged myself into it. I studied journalism. So years and years ago, I was Corbynism years. I was going to all of the rallies. I was like because I was so engaged. I think so many young people were so engaged at that time because it felt really hopeful. And I remember like I was studying journalism. I hated how the British media was so like, my whole dissertation was on the bias in right-wing media and how the language that they use compared to the other side. And like, I remember just being so enamored by, engaged and outraged by it because to me, it was so obvious. It's like, how is nobody else seeing that there's so much bias here? And the media have so much power. The legacy media, like you say, they are the ones that control everything, you know? And I think drag is political. I think being queer is political. I think every day you get out onto the street, wearing whatever you want or being however you want to be, standing up for what you believe, that is political. And I think everyone has a voice. We live in the UK. Every single person should use their voice in whatever way. And we're at a time where it feels, well, the pendulum swung to the right and people are having their voice silenced for standing up for Palestine, you know? And we can't allow that to continue. So we need more voices everywhere across the board, and we need less misinformation from the media, and there needs to be some sort of regulation of truth there.
Yeah, and also, joy. I think sometimes one of the things missing from left-wing politics is the hopefulness, the optimism, the joyful. There is a reason why comedians are predominantly left-wing. Aside from the fact that obviously you're just very smart if you're left-wing and much more witty. But like there is, I'm just saying, it's just very clear.
I'm one of the smartest boys in school.
But it's because politics of compassion and humanity lends itself to the arts. It lends itself to creativity in a way that hoarding doesn't, selfishness doesn't. And I guess I'm asking, do you feel that there's a creativity missing in the left? Is that where your drag comes into it?
I believe that everybody should be allowed access to have their voice and have their voices heard. And I think that's what politics is about. And I know that's what you stand for. And like you see politics and the way that the media like create it, and we see Labour's gone to the right. And we do need more acts of joy. We do need more acts of radical joy and acceptance, you know. Actually, I think empathy is a big thing that we're lacking. It's the us and them divide and conquer mentality that we're seeing so much. And unfortunately, we're at a time where migrants are getting the brunt of it right now. Trans people have had it and are still continuing to get it. They always attack the marginalised groups, but if they're going to come for one, they're going to come for us all. And that's where you have to really understand that.
Yeah.
And on the migrants thing, like it's like when they talk about, they say all of our problems are because of migrants. Essentially, people believe that. It's like, I think the taxpayer annually pays £2 a year annually to house asylum seekers or to benefit the asylum seeking system. I would happily spend £2 a year to do that. If people are trying to seek and get a better life over here, you know, I'd rather my money going to benefit and help other people than a lot of the places it's going now.
It is scary how willing people are to throw away their own human rights out of hatred, a whipped up hatred for a migrant. I mean, I like to think I'm quite radical. And yet I find myself being like, you know what's great, Nish? Human rights. Like I find myself saying the most basic thing. That's not that radical, is it? But apparently it is. Do you know what's good? Law.
But Nigel Farage likes migrants when it's benefiting, like economic migrants. When, I don't know if you saw this recently, it's come out and he'd got some money from doing a speech in Kuala Lumpur where he was doing a talk to a load of other economic migrants that are trying to get second or third passports so they can avoid tax in different countries. And it's like, it's okay for migrants when it benefits the tax and benefits the wealthy, but when it's people that are displaced or trying to seek a better life, then they are the problem.
Listen, the rhetoric is so amped up at the moment. I mean, I'm literally talking on a day where I've received a string of photos from a friend of mine who is at a counter-protest in Bristol that has happened this morning because a group of far-right protesters have turned up at another asylum hotel. And asylum seekers are not the reason this country's economy is in the state that it's in. You know, asylum seekers didn't spend years decimating our welfare state or spend years decimating the way that our economy is organised. We have so many problems, but our most fundamental problem is a problem of misdirected anger, and we've turned powerless people on each other. So the working class is now turned on people that it should be standing in class solidarity with. So turning to you, Zarah, we got to rebuild those alliances, right?
The thing is also that the right don't have a monopoly on anger. I feel angry.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone in this room feels angry when we look at the levels of inequality, when we realize that we have more food banks than McDonald's restaurants in this country, when we look at the way politicians have basically transferred so much public wealth into private hands. We've seen that's actual scandalous behavior, and we saw it most vividly during COVID, where friends of MPs were just getting millions of pounds in fake PPE. That sort of fraud is just written off. And the way that people on benefits, disabled people, migrants, trans people are then attacked. All of these things are deliberate strategies, and we have to make the arguments, but we also have to go out and talk to people.
Yeah.
There's no shortcut in undoing the damage that has been done to our country. The social contract's broken. I think young people feel it quite a lot. As someone who graduated with £50,000 of student debt and then realised that, you know, they tell you just get good grades, just go to a good uni, and then your life is sorted, you'll get a great job, you'll get a house, and you realise that doesn't fucking happen unless, you know, there's something miraculous happens to you in your life. I feel like I'm an anomaly for my generation, for someone to graduate, have that debt, be able to get a really well-paid job, and the privileges that come with it. But that's not the life that most of my peers have.
That's not systemic.
No, I'm a complete utter anomaly, and therefore it is important to understand that the social contract's broken. People don't feel hope. You've got the far right polling sky high, like they will be in government, and so what are we going to do about it? So we need to get into our communities, we need to knock on doors, we need to have conversations, we need to support trade union membership, we need to support tenants and tenants unions when our neighbours are being evicted, and challenge racist, anti-migrant, transphobic rhetoric wherever it rears its ugly head. Like Bim said, our safety is in solidarity. Our lives are deeply interconnected. You know, you can't get rid of Islamophobia and racism in society without also ending transphobia and all forms of discrimination. Like, we are intimately linked to one another, and that's what solidarity is, that's what socialism is, and that's why it's so important for me in setting up a new left-wing party to be quite clear about our values and our principles, because if people don't share those progressive views, then like you said, there's plenty of other parties that they can be looking to, not a left-wing grassroots Democratic Socialist Party.
So where does that leave us then with someone like Adnan Hussein, who's recently angered a lot of the prospective members of the new party by saying that trans women are not biologically women, and safe third spaces, which still nobody has explained to me how that fucking works. Safe third spaces should be an option for trans people. How do you manage that as you set this new party up and place core values in situ that are going to guide the way that policy is being drawn up?
There is no room for socially conservative views in a socialist left-wing party, period. We have to defend the rights, dignity, and life of everyone, and that means centering the most marginalized. And if people don't have pro-trans, pro-migrant, anti-racist values, then, like I said, there are plenty of other political spaces that you can enter, but not this one, because we have to have our values. We need to let people know what we stand for, and then we need to be going out to the country and saying, this is the vision of society that we want, that we believe we can achieve, and we want you all to be part of it.
Listen, if you're transphobic, you're not short of options. With absolute
Literally.
respect. In British politics, for Christ's sake, join the fucking Conservative Party and watch a Ricky Gervais Netflix special. You're fine.
Do you know what's wild though with transphobia? It's so of like a zeitgeist thing and like whatever's happening culturally, because 20 years ago when Trump was like in charge of, or he owned Miss Universe.
Yeah.
He was advocating for the trans woman as the first Miss Universe. He was like fully supporting. There's videos of him being like, I believe the transgender. Like he was very supportive, and now he's gone the other way. So it's just like people just talk a load of shit. No one's got integrity, you know.
And it's also what's been funded, right? So when you look at anti-abortion, anti-trans think tanks and movements, you'll see a lot of right-wing funding that comes from the States that finds its way in Europe and even in the UK, and it's a deliberate international strategy to divide our communities, so we all identify a scapegoat. It might be the trans community today, it might be Muslims tomorrow, and so we're punching down rather than looking and punching up and seeing who's actually the root of all of our problems.
It must be nice now that you're out of Labour to not have to performatively say how many flags you have. How many flags do you have?
But how many flags do you have, Zarah Sultana?
You've put me on the spot. I can count how many football shirts I've got, but I don't have any flags. Therefore, the Labour Party would have kicked me out. It's all about this performative bullshit and this false portrayal of what patriotism is. As someone who is in love with our NHS, with institutions in this country, I'm very proud of our NHS. I'm very proud of our country at its best, and therefore, I always feel like as an Asian woman, as a woman of colour, as a Muslim, I always have to be like, I am British, but why do I have to say that when actually no one else has to prove themselves? And it's a shame that all of this flag behaviour and shenanigans isn't addressing those structural economic issues that will make people's lives materially better. It doesn't matter how many flags you've got in your window if you can't feed your kids.
But do you have a Princess Diana mug?
I love Princess Diana. I do have a mug.
I know, it's weird, isn't it? It is weird.
No, I genuinely do. I bought it from a charity shop. I love Princess Diana.
Of course she has a fucking Princess Diana mug. Yeah. She's a brown woman. It was bought for her by her mother. Are you joking?
I've got my own. My mum has her own.
How many flags you got, Bimini?
I can count probably like 4 that have been shredded into outfits. Because I felt like I love to be inspired by the Union Jack, Cool Britannia of the 90s, when Jerry Halliwell was and for me it's I kind of love wearing it, and then in the subversion way of walking down the road and then people being like, a bloke from the pub called Dave who's that's my flag. But I feel like you can fly the flag, you can be patriotic, you can support your country, but you can also not be racist.
Yeah.
I boil so much piss when I wear my England top and I upload it. Honestly, people just can't understand, you said, multifaceted.
Exactly.
As a British person who has talked openly about sort of, your rejection of the gender binary, where are you sort of deriving hope from? Because your journey and the way that you've talked so openly, there's this beautiful clip from your series of Drag Race where you kind of explain the concept of being non-binary. I think probably for a lot of people, it was their first encounter with somebody just explaining it on a human level. Where are you finding optimism from, given that we've talked a lot in the last few months of the show, about the dangers and the threats posed to the trans community? Where are you deriving hope from at this moment right now as a British person?
I have worked too hard on myself to allow someone to tell me that I shouldn't feel the type of way. I know who I am, I know how I feel, and I know that the binary doesn't actually benefit the majority of people. Yeah. The binary, on a basic level, if you take it away, it has created so much division in terms of men can't express their emotion because they're not taught to do that, because they're taught to man up, and then girls are taught to be quiet. This is just on a basic level. You go into society and there's the disproportionate gap in wealth and in jobs for men and women just because of these gender ideology. We created gender. We've gendered everything from blue to pink, from strong to feminine and masculine, and what that is. Sex and gender are two different things, and gender is a socially constructed ideology, and I reject the binary because I know for me it doesn't benefit myself, and I'll be whoever I want to be, and I can flow between both, and I think there's power in that.
Right. Let's talk some strategies. So one of the criticisms of the creation of this new party is that it's going to splinter the left. Obviously, over at the Greens, they've got their new leader, Zach Polansky. He's, hello, we've got a fan here.
I honestly cannot interpret what that noise was. Zach Polansky got a massive mandate from the Greens, 85% of the vote. So listen, I'll level with you personally about how I feel, right? My fear is there is going to be a splintering of the left vote between bits of the Labour Party, bits of the Green Party, the SNP in Scotland, and obviously your party as well. My fear is, I'll just lay it all out. Jenrick becomes leader of the Tories, which I think feels like to me like is going to be is inevitable. Jenrick does a deal with Reform because the Conservative Party has never ever been able to control Nigel Farage. It has constantly been dancing to his tune really for most of the 21st century at this point. And my fear is that the electoral maths means that a splintering of the progressive vote means that Reform, with the assistance of the Conservative Party, will form the bulk of the next government. Talk me down.
Okay.
Because I am shitting myself.
Don't shit yourself. No one wants to see that. So what's happened in the Greens is positive. It shows that there's been a massive shift in strategy, in direction, and what Zach Polansky's platform was, which is eco-populism.
Yeah.
That's a positive thing. Our party, your party, the left-wing party, is all about class politics. That is integral to what we're building, and we're not shying away from it. We are a socialist party. The Greens will never, or don't at least at the moment, identify in that way. And that is a distinction that is really important. Trade unions also will be at the heart of what we're building. But we will not be splitting the left vote. We don't really understand yet what that means materially when it comes to electoralism. And I think it's too premature to be saying, well, this constituency will run in and the Greens will run in this constituency.
Right.
That has to be done democratically, and the Greens will say the same to you. But there will come a time where those of us who have the same values, that don't support genocide in Palestine, that aren't driving austerity, which rules out the Labour Party, by the way, come around the table and are able to negotiate. But that time is not yet, and we've got 4 years to figure it out. It will take some time, and so don't shit yourself.
But you might have to work with bits of the Labour Party as well, because there are still Labour MPs that
anyone
are
who
still, that are still
anyone
signed
who
up for those
voted
values.
against
Yeah.
austerity, anyone who has supported any vote or campaign to stop arms sales is someone I can work with and we can work with.
Bim, I want to bring you in here because I saw an interview that you gave where you talked with great energy about the party that Zarah was setting up. And I just wondered, do you feel that way about the Greens?
So I think the Greens currently, no. No, I don't. I think
Imagine if that was just the end of your answer.
Yeah.
I think we need a shake-up. I think it's unfair to always, the question is always about splitting the left vote. Labour did that themselves by going to the right, So the fact that they went there, we need someone to shake it up. I hope that Greens, they could find a way to work with your party to come to where it's more of a socialist values and a lot of more people in the melting pot rather than just a two-party system. And I think that that's the way to be more progressive, is to listen to more voices. We need different people sat at the table. We need different points of view, understanding, and also just to tell fascists no.
Fuck off.
But I think it's really important that we don't rule out any coalition building, that we work with people that are going to work with us as a progressive, unified movement to keep out reform. And also, it's really important to articulate the fact that, as you're seeing in America, changing the Department of Defense to the whatever it is, the Department of War.
They've just been honest about what they're doing.
But also, that, I'm afraid, amazingly, has not brought down the price of fucking eggs. And the Rubicon that we need to cross as a progressive movement is, how do we make the working class people of this country realise that Farage is a threat to them, and he absolutely is a threat to them, in the way that Trump is absolutely a threat to working class Americans because he can only finance his tax cuts by cutting Medicaid. How do we do that, you two? Now, go.
I think it comes down to empathy and compassion. I think instead of having people like Nigel Farage or other people that might not know all of the information sat on millions of people watching television in the morning, hearing points of view for people that it doesn't affect. We should have people that are actually being affected by these issues. We should have more migrants coming on to talk about maybe the stories. I know it's not like that's a trauma for them, but maybe actually hearing other humans talking about things, I think is really crucial. Having trans people come on and just actually talk about their experience and then hear people hearing it. We need more of that than the dividing and like getting people onto This Morning, for example, to have an argument about it, because there's always an agenda. We need more humanity and more compassion, and I think that's where we'll change, because essentially working class people, they need it, that what they've managed to do is turn working class people against people that are less fortunate than them and need the help up, and I think it comes down to humanity. It needs more of that.
Like Bim said, their politics is on fear and hate, and our politics is about love, empathy and solidarity. So how do we tell our story? How do we tell the story of London, of Coventry, of the UK, which is a working class story of immigration, of trade union radicalism, how we all fought for our rights. It was never bestowed upon us, right? The NHS, the right to work, votes for women and so forth. All of these things were fought for. People died for them, and now, you know, the same kind of people that celebrate rights for women and the suffragette movement, who wear the sachets and so forth, are the ones prescribing non-violent direct action groups. The hypocrisy and the irony in that is there for everyone to see. But we need to tell our story. We need to communicate it. Yeah. And I think
because also our story is, it is like the working class is not some group distinct from the LGBTQ community and the immigrant community. You know, we are also the working class. Mm-hmm. My grandmother worked in a fucking light bulb. Like, no one is ever going to confuse me with being working class. With love to my grammar school and Durham University education. But like, my grandmother worked in a light bulb factory in Leicester. Like that, we are not distinct from the working class.
No, we are the working class, and I think we need to tell our story, and we can't rely on legacy media, mainstream TV to do it, but we also have to be organising. Those of us who are politicians and activists and organisers, we have to do the not so glamorous work of being in our communities. And right now, some of the most direct action is fighting fascists when they come into our communities and try to divide us and spread their hate. We need to be speaking to the issues that people care about, and we need to build a political movement with them. It's incumbent on us to involve all of our communities right from the get-go.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you very much to London Podcast Festival. Thank you very much to King's Place for hosting us. Thank you all, the audience, for coming. Thank you, and give a massive, massive round of applause to both of our guests on the stage, to Zarah Sultana and Bimini Bon-Boulash. Pod Save the UK is a reduced listing production for Crooked Media. Thank you and good night.